have with us the world champion of public speaking 2015. And I know I'm biased, but by far he is my favorite world champion. Sorry, Mohammed. Now that we have a South African in the room, you have competition. Mohammed Qahtani, who is he? What is he? And what is he going to do? Ladies and gentlemen, to track this man down and to get him to be present is a journey of more than 3 years. I met him the first time and the only time in Dubai when they had a conference where 3 world champions shared the stage. And I was mind blown. I'm going to try to be funny by keeping quiet and listening to what this man has to say. Please put your hands together for not one, the only Mohammed Qahtani. Woohoo! Woo-hoo-hoo!
Thank you, Celia. Can you all hear me? Am I audible?
Perfect.
Yes, you are.
Can you see my weird face? All right, let's begin. All right, my fellow Toastmasters. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And today I'm not talking to you as the world champion. I'm talking to you as a former stand-up comedian. You know, back in my old days when I was young and cute, I know it's hard to believe, but I used to do some stand-up comedy. And today I'm gonna just give some tips on how you can write jokes. I know a lot of people might think, I'm not really a funny person. I don't even know how to tell jokes. Well, Exhibit A. For those of people who have met me in person, they can tell you that I'm not really a funny person. However, jokes can be taught how to write. So like I'm gonna share with you some tips on how you can write some jokes, and then I'm gonna talk about the delivery of the joke in an order. In a way that you nail the punchline. So basically, a joke consists of a premise, a setup, and a punchline. So the premise is where the joke is happening. Then the setup is the thing leading up to the joke, and then the punchline is what makes people laugh, basically. First of all, where you can drive jokes from. Now, there are 3 things that you can do to drive jokes. First is you can do it from a situation. And these are abundant, actually. Anything that you go through in your entire day could be turned into a humorous speech, or could be turned into a stand-up routine. You're standing in line at the cashier at your local grocery store. Look around. Look at the type of people that, go there and get on your nerves. There's a stand-up comedy there. You're going to the gym and you notice the type of people in the gym. There's a humorous speech in there too. You go to a Toastmaster meeting and you see club members. There's always a humorous speech in that too. So this is the first way that you can drive humor out of a situation. The second way that you can do it is from a person. You can drive jokes on a person. That's for example, what roasts are. If I'm asked to roast a person, I can just poke fun at that person and bring some jokes about that person. But you have to be careful. If the person is a well-known person, he might laugh at the first few jokes, and then after that, and then it might get, under his nerve. Unless you know the person really well and you know that the person can take a joke, then I can do that. Or you can drive a joke about an anonymous person that nobody knows. So you start your speech by a description of the person, maybe how tall he is, how he looks, and then the funny things that he does or the jokes that you can drive it from. So you can do it based on a situation or based on a person. Now, writing jokes. I'm going to go through some techniques that can help you, even if you think that you're not funny, that can help you to come up with jokes. And the first technique is called exaggeration. Now, exaggeration is to take something and describe it in a way that it's so exaggerated that it doesn't make sense. And the bigger the exaggeration, the funnier the punchline will be. Here's an example. One day I was driving in the highway, and I came across a town, a very small town, a town so small, the entry and the exit sign are on the same pole. Now, why is that funny? Because the town is so small. How small is it? The entry and the exit sign to the town are on the same pole, which means the town is just the width of a pole. It doesn't make sense, of course, but that's what makes it funny. And you can do it with any description that you might want. How tall a thing is, or how short it is, or how big it is, or how small it is, or how beautiful it is, or how ugly it is. So, you know, when you watch stand-up comedy routines and they do your mama jokes. So your mama jokes are basically exaggeration jokes. Your mama's so fat, so-and-so. Your mama's so ugly, so-and-so. So these jokes are based on exaggeration. And as I said, you can do it on any description that you might want. For example, let me pick on one of you guys, if you don't mind. Let's go to Mark. So I'm gonna do a joke on Mark. Mark is so handsome. So handsome, in fact, that George Clooney sent him a friend request. So you see why that joke is funny. Why? Because George Clooney is like the epitome of what handsome is. And when George Clooney sends you a friend request, you must be smoking hot, right? So that's an example of how you can drive jokes out of an exaggeration. So do you guys want to take an exercise? Is that allowed? Are we allowed within the are we allowed within the time? So I want someone, okay, I want someone to poke fun at me. All right. Mr. Qahtani is so unappealing or so ugly that what? So how you can do it? Now, the thing that you want to describe is ugliness, right? Now, I want you to think of the ugliest thing that you ever seen, or the ugliest thing that people have ever seen. Anybody want to give me an example?
Toastmaster Abdullah.
Really? Okay, I'm not gonna pick on any one of you guys. No, just give me an example of some.
Abdul volunteered, and then there's Sammy as well.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Do you want me to finish the sentence which you said about Mohammed Qahtani?
Yes, Mr. Qahtani is so ugly.
DTM Mohammed Qahtani is so ugly that my dog, when he sees him, he doesn't bark.
There you go. See, now that's funny. Why? Because dogs usually bark at something that's scary or something, you know, that's terrifying. I am so ugly that even a dog won't even bark at me. So that is a perfect example of what an exaggeration is. So how we can do exaggeration? Take something that you want to describe, and take the adjectives that you want to actually describe. You know, length, width, height, weight, whatever, and think of then the most extreme example of it, and use that as a punchline. The second type of humor, or the second technique of humor, is pun humor. Now, pun humor depends a lot on words, or the play of words. And the way to do pun humor is to take a word that might have multiple meanings, or a phrase that might have multiple meanings. And when you do that, you drive the humor from the second meaning of the word. Or you can take a word that, or two words that might sound the same, and drive the humor from the second part. And I'll give you an example of that. If I said to you the word wild, what does wild mean? Anybody? Wild. When I say wild.
Not refined.
Okay, so maybe you're thinking of a wild animal, right? Something that lives in the wild, right? However, also the word wild has a different meaning. When I say wild, what also comes to mind? Woo! You know, I'm kind of a wild person. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, a wild person. So if I said to you a wild animal, what does that mean?
Dangerous
An,
animal.
an an animal that lives in the wild, right? However, the word wild, as we said earlier, might have a different meaning. And I can derive the humor from the second meaning of the word. So I can say something like this: my cat is a wild animal. She comes home drunk every single night. Now, why is that funny? Because wild animal means an animal in the wild, but I use the word wild meaning, a person who parties and drinks a lot. So that's an example of using pun humor. Another example, as I said, is using a word that might sound the same, or two words that might sound. I'm like two words. Which might sound the same. And like here's an example. Uh, my brother was trying to reach the meat on the top shelf, but he couldn't reach it. He looked at me and he said, "The stakes are too high." So the word stake, S-T-A-K-E, has a meaning, and S-T-E-A-K has a meaning as well. But both words sound the same. So you derive humor from the second word. The stake is too high, but I meant the steak, as in the meat, is too high. So that's the second way of how you can drive humor. The third way that you can do humor is what I like to call misdirection. And this is easy to implement. Now, in misdirection is when you tell a statement or when you tell a story and the audience expects it to go one way. But the punchline is when you turn it completely opposite and you mean something completely different. Here's an example. I walked into my house the other day, and when I walked into the living room, I saw my son. He fell on the table. He hit his head on the side of the table, and there was blood everywhere. And I thought, oh my God, I just cleaned the carpet. Now, why is that funny? Because people thought, oh my God, I'm worried about my son. Turns out, I'm worried more about the carpet. And that's what makes it funny. So you tell a statement or you tell a story, and when people expect it to go one way, you turn it around and you mean something completely different. So this is called misdirection. The next type of technique on writing jokes is what I like to call the rule of three. Now, this is by far the easiest way that you can do, like jokes or do humor. And for those of you who said, I don't know how to do humor or how to be funny, start with this one because it's very easy to implement. Now, the rule of three is when you mention three things, the first two are normal. And the last one is either the opposite or abnormal or out of the like ordinary. So for example, I had a friend who's an expert in breeding animals. This guy can breed anything: a dog, a cat, a chair. Now, it's funny why, because dogs and cats you can breed. A chair you can't. So it's a bit of an exaggeration, but also you give two things that's normal, and the third thing that's abnormal or opposite. So for example, if you know, if you remember the world champions 2017 speech, Mr. Manoj, and his speech, he was talking about, I had a nice life, a nice job, a nice hair, but he was bald. So nice job, nice hair. I'm like nice job, nice life, normal. Nice hair doesn't make sense because we can all see that he's bald, and that's what made it funny, and that's why people laugh. The next technique in humor is called reference humor. Now, in reference humor, you can do a reference to something that people already know, something like common within the society that you're in, something people are used to, or you can do a reference to an area or to a piece on your speech that came earlier and you mention it later in the speech, but make it in a punchline that makes it sound funny. So an example of that is the 2014 World Championship of public speaking. And the speech title was "I see something in you, but I don't know what it is." And Mr. Hitirachi, throughout his entire speech, he kept repeating that catchphrase, "I see something in you, but I don't know what it is." And he went on, "I see something in you, but I don't know what it is." And then later on in his speech, he was talking to his wife, and he said to her, "Baby, why did you marry me?" And she looked at me and she said, "I saw something in you, and I still don't know what it is." And people laughed at that. Why? Because he referenced that catchphrase in his speech throughout. You can use a reference to something that's happening, I mean, like as of a current event. For example, I can make a joke and say, I was going out with this girl once. It was a very nice date. We had a wonderful time. And by the end of the night, I leaned in for the kiss. But then I stopped myself. Wait. Let me just remove the mask. And then I leaned back in. So why is that funny? Because people know that we're going through COVID times. And so the mask joke will I mean, like people will laugh at it because they know we're going through this COVID time thing. So these are some techniques that can help you to write jokes. Start, as I said, with a story or a situation that you're going through or a person that you want to talk about, and then drive jokes about it. For example, if you want to make jokes about yourself, then start describing how fast you walk. Use exaggeration. Start telling a story and then use and try to misdirect your audience into another punchline. Try the rule of three. Try pun humor if you're really good with words. That's kind of like my weakness. I'm not really good with words, but if you are, then maybe okay. Then maybe I can use the pun humor. So these are some easy techniques that can help you to write jokes. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about how you can nail the punchline in terms of
Is that part of the show?
You are muted, Mohammed.
Can you hear me all?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. All right. I just want to see if I can see the timer or not. Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna go briefly about the delivery of the jokes. First of all, and this is most importantly, remember, do not be the first person to laugh at your own jokes. I've seen this a lot with comedians and sometimes with humor speakers. They give a joke and then and they're smiling at the joke. It lessens the impact of the joke. The joke comes more naturally if you give it with a straight face. So if I gave the earliest joke, and I said, my brother was trying to reach for the meat on the top shelf, and then he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I can't. The steak is too high." You see, now the joke is not really as funny as much. But if I said, but then he said, "I can't. The steak is too high." Now it has more impact because I gave the joke with a straight face. Second thing, when it comes to delivery, always remember, when it comes to jokes or giving and just giving humor, you always have a 50-50 chance of your jokes working or bombing. I've done some jokes that I wrote and I thought it's hilarious and I got nothing. Now, when that happens, it's very important that you do not let that get to you. And how do you do that? The minute that you walk onto the stage, you are under the belief that my jokes, there's a 50-50 chance it might work, it might not work. If it works and people laughed, that's great. If it did not work, I'm already prepared to move on to the next joke. Why? Because I've seen people when they give a punchline and they just wait. You got it? Like they are waiting for the audience to laugh, but that never happens. And that lessens your performance as a comedian or as a humorous or like as a humorous speaker. Uh, Now times to who you can poke fun at. And this is very important because I know when it comes to humorous speeches within the Toastmasters fraternity, we are really careful, but I know a lot of you might want to take this on the road and maybe do an open mic at a stand-up comedy club. And you have to be very careful not to offend anybody. And in this day and age, with the whole like of people trying to be, I mean, PC about all the jokes and like to be like politically, kind of correct. Uh, you tend to worry when you write a joke. You might write a very funny joke about people who are overweight, and the joke might be extremely funny. But then there might be some people in the audience who are overweight. You might write a joke about a certain race or a certain nationality or a certain people, and you might get some laughs in the audience, but it also comes out as distasteful. Here's one thing that I've noticed, especially in Toastmasters, when people do humorous speeches. In every humorous speech, there's always a speaker who poke fun at his wife, or she pokes fun at her husband. And it comes out as a person who just pokes fun at all women, or a woman who's poking fun at all men. And the first few jokes might laugh, it might actually just get you a laugh and people were laughing, but then after a while, like, why? Because you already offended people. So in order for you to make sure that you don't offend anybody, there are two things that you can do. First, poke fun at yourself. And that's the easiest because you cannot offend anybody. You're poking fun at yourself. I had a friend of mine in a humorous contest, and he was overweight. And his whole speech was about him struggling with weight, and it came out completely funny, even though he did some what you can call fat jokes, but nobody took offense because he himself is overweight. So he was safe in that regard. If you're a man, poke fun at all men. We're not gonna be offended. If you're a woman, poke fun at all women. So that makes you be in the safe area. Poke fun at yourself or poke fun at who you are. For example, if you are an Indian, you can poke fun at Indian people. Nobody will be, but I cannot, but like if I did that, it will come out as, it's a bit of a bad taste. If you are from the Middle East, poke fun at like Middle East people. If you are white, poke fun at white people. If you are dark skinned, poke fun at dark skinned people. But nobody will be offended because you are one of them. And you can see that actually when you watch stand-up comedy, you can see a comedian who's white, and when he does jokes that might touch on black people, he tries to avoid it, but he can make fun of white people all he wants because he knows he's white too. He cannot offend anybody. Black people do the same thing too. They make fun of themselves. But if a white comedian would do that, it might come out as a bad taste. And finally, please have fun with it. When you do humor, you make people laugh. And to me, honestly, it's the best feeling. And like, I would rather give a stand-up comedy rather than giving a motivational speech. Why? Because when people laugh, it's like you're a doctor. You're just healing people just by making them laugh. And if you are not sure if your jokes are gonna work, try to test it in a Toastmaster club. And here you have a very wonderful environment because it's a club for comedy. So if you want to be a stand-up comedian, for example, write a stand-up comedy like routine, call your club and say, you know what, I have the stand-up comedy routine. I want to try it out on you guys. Try it and see the reactions. Why? Because some jokes might be extremely funny to you, but the audience are not going to get, especially if it's a reference humor. I might give a reference about Star Wars, but not all of my audience are Star Wars fans. I might think it's funny, but the audience might not actually just get it. So what's funny to you might not be funny to your audience, and you're not giving a speech for yourself, you're giving it for them. So you have to tailor it to whatever they like and whatever they're gonna laugh at. And please try to break out from the Toastmaster environment and try to test this in stand-up comedy clubs. I mean, like in the stand-up comedy clubs or like open mic nights. I know everywhere they have these. They have like an open mic night. Go there, write your name down. I know that you're gonna say, well, what if I go there and I'm gonna bomb? Who cares? Right? Who cares? Now, why I say this, because yes, even though the Toastmaster fraternity is very empowering, and we always evaluate to motivate, but you want to really test your skills in the real world. So write a stand-up comedy routine and test it in your club first. If it works, then go to an open mic night and say, I want to try myself there. Do it. If you bombed, it's not the end of the world. I have bombed countless times, but at least you get a feel of what the people might laugh at. And as I said, always have fun with it. Thank you so much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a silent applause for our champion, Toastmaster Mohammed Qahtani. Mohammed, you have given us such amazing golden nuggets. I think I'm going to chew them for the next few weeks. I honestly had so much to take away from this. And Toastmaster Sami, I hope you are ready for some editing. Toastmaster Khaled, I am ready to try this. But before we continue and I try my stand-up comedy skills, ladies and gentlemen, one last round of applause to our champ. Thank you, Mohammed. What an honor to have you, to learn from the best. Honestly, you know, I saw your humorous speeches and then, you know, international. And Toastmaster Samir did the same, Toastmaster Sami did the same. They became humorous masters and then they became international masters. So the same with, I saw Samira Khan here earlier on. She was my first mentor and absolute comedian. Thank you for those absolute golden nuggets. As I said, I have a basket full and I'm going to eat them for the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for joining us tonight. Much, much appreciated.